We now come to our prepared speeches. Our first speech, giving is number 2, speech from the Competent Communicator Manual, how to organize your speech in 5 to 7 minutes, entitled 10,000, Jim Burlison.
Okay, first question. What do Bill Gates, the Beatles, and Tiger Woods all have in common? And in the case of the Beatles, we're not talking about any rapprochement because at least 2 of them are dead, I think. But they each spent at least 10,000 hours practicing their craft before they first achieved distinction. In recent years, cognitive psychologists and scientists have arrived at a consensus that it takes at least 10,000 hours of practice before a person becomes an expert in their field of endeavor. The old adage of practice makes perfect has been proved to be true. Let's consider a number of points. The first point is that the 10,000-hour rule seems to apply no matter how innately smart a person is. Even a person as inherently gifted as Fred would require that much time. Experts are able to recognize situations based on the experience of many prior situations. As a result, they can make rapid decisions in complex and dynamic circumstances by relying on what is called recognition-primed decision-making. It apparently takes that long for the brain to become sufficiently wired to master this process. The second point is when you're talking about 10,000 hours, you're talking about some serious time. I understand Arnie is a violin player. If Arnie were to practice every single day for 1 hour, that would be 365.25 hours a year. At that rate, it would only take him 27 years and 4 months to become a true expert. If he were to increase his practice time to 3 hours a day, he could shortcut his path to virtuosity to around a mere 9 years. What about public speaking? At an average of 6 minutes of speech, at Toastmasters, it would take 100,000 speeches to log 10,000 hours of speaking. I started here a month ago, and this is my second speech, so I only have 98,998 speeches to go. That's probably just as frightening a thought to you as it is to me. In terms of the workplace, how long would it take for a person to become expert at their job? If someone diligently applied themselves for at least 8 hours every day, it would take them about 3 years and 4 months to become an expert. However, that'd be working every single day. That isn't realistic, as it doesn't count for weekends, holidays, vacations. Even the 8 hours a day is questionable. Can a person really concentrate and focus enough for 8 hours of hard practice on their craft every day? That probably can't. They probably can't. 5 or 6 hours, if that, is probably more realistic. At that rate, it would be in the range of 7 to 8 years before someone can really become an expert at their job. A third point is that the case studies that have been done, the 10,000-hour threshold seems to be pretty consistent. What about people I mentioned at the outset? In the case of Bill Gates, it was learned that he had gained access to a computer at school when he was 13. And before he was 18, he easily put in more than 10,000 hours of computer programming time. In the case of the Beatles, they were still teenagers. They got gigs playing in Hamburg, Germany, playing at nightclubs where they played 8 hours each time. In the early 60s, before they achieved acclaim, they had already played together in concert at these various nightclubs on at least 1,200 separate occasions. In the case of Tiger, he started playing golf when he was 2. His dad, Earl, had been a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and he provided Tiger with a disciplined practice regimen. So he had already logged 10,000 hours of practice time before he won his first junior world championship. Now, some people have challenged this here using prodigies as an example. One of the most renowned prodigies in history was Mozart. He was considered a natural genius, a wunderkind, who started composing when he was 6. However, on close study, many musicologists contended he didn't produce his first masterpiece until he wrote his 9th piano concerto at age 21, after 15 years of intense composition and study. Now, just working at a craft for 10,000 hours will not guarantee that you achieve greatness or that you will be the best in your field. Natural talent and genius do account for something. However, without the 10,000 hours, you won't even have a chance of being in the discussion. Now, I'm curious, how many of you have, raise your hands, how many of you have put 10,000 hours into any particular field of endeavor? Well, that's pretty good. You're better than me. No, in preparing the speech, I had to stop and reflect about my own state of affairs, which proved to be very humbling. Except for the time spent in my profession, I was pretty hard-pressed to think of anything. There had been a lot of time playing baseball, basketball, and football a long time ago, but that's no longer relevant. A jack of all trades and a master of none. No wonder I'm not great at anything. I just haven't put in the time. And then it came to me. There was something outside of work where I had really put in the time. I had clearly spent at least 10,000 hours of my life in just sort of hanging out and doing nothing. Not only did my hours of doing nothing meet the requisite time, it also tended to support the 10,000 hour rule as the benchmark for becoming an expert. In my early days of doing nothing, I would do things like bring home work from the office. At night or weekends, I would see the files sitting on the kitchen table and feel guilty that I wasn't attending to those files or working at it. Then when I got my 10,000 hours in, I dispensed with that foolishness. No more bringing files home from the office or torturing myself with feelings of guilt for not being productive when I had time off. I was then able to fully relax and enjoy doing nothing. At that point, I had truly become an expert. In summary, it usually takes at least 10,000 hours of hard practice to really become an expert. If you want to become an expert at your job, you should expect that it's going to take you at least 7 to 8 years. Most of the people who have achieved renown in their field have done it by years of hard practice. The bottom line is that no matter how much natural talent God has blessed you with, you simply have to put in the time to practice. Mr. Toastmaster.